Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander to temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen.
I send my love over the mountains. I send my love over the sea. I send my love into the heavens, and it returns to me.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'm really glad to be with you guys. We're going to jump into A Course in Miracles. This is Brother T, your host tonight. And of course, we're going to be talking about this book, A Course in Miracles. And I've missed being here. I was just glad to be back on Thursday nights. And I really appreciate everyone for joining with me tonight and being here with me, regardless of when you actually might catch this video, because it is, it can be, you can go back and look at it whenever you want to. But I just want to say thank you for being here, and I'm really glad to be here with you as well. So hello, and here we are back in the orange chair. So we left off last week with A Course in Miracles. We had literally worked our way through several of the workbook lessons. Well, not the workbook lessons, but the principles of miracles is what I want to say. So where we had left off, if I remember correctly, was that we were ready to get into 51, and I think we'd gone through the first 50. 50 was the miracle as a learning device, which lessens the need for time. And we talked about that. And then 51 is the miracle is the only device which man has at his immediate disposal for controlling time. So let's just jump in there with that one. But before we do, I want to give some attribution to my friend Lori Lefevre, who was singing that rendition of song, I Send My Love. She worked with us at one of the communities that we have worked with in the past, and I was fortunate enough to capture that on one of her presentations one morning, on a Sunday morning, and it's just been one of my favorite melodies. And the prayer that I'm sharing with you there is really, it's the Lord's Prayer, actually, but it was rewritten a little bit by one, I believe, who has the credentials to rewrite it, and it was Jesus. He rewrote that, and we will be talking about that prayer because it's in the textbook, in A Course in Miracles textbook. And so we will be coming to a time when we'll be actually reading that prayer as part of our discussion as we learn more about this teaching. So again, thank you, Lori, for your beautiful voice and for sharing your love and talent with us. And it was really my pleasure to do the voiceover and to share that prayer in that short recording there. So I hope you enjoyed that. I use that prayer also as I sign off on my Course in Miracles workbook lessons every morning. We're doing those every day now. We're on lesson 30 today, since it's January 30th. And My cat may be joining us here. So it's really meaningful to me. So I'm glad to share it there too. You can find and join the lessons with us at facebook.com/course mastery, COURSE mastery. And you can also join me there. Well, I think if you join if you add yourself to the Facebook page there, if you become a fan or a Facebook page, if you like my page there, then you'll get a feed. You can set your attributes so that you get those postings, and I post that every morning. And so you can go there and just click on it, and you can listen to those workbook lessons anytime, really. And it'll take you to my podcast station, which is blogtalkradio.com/course mastery again, but it's called The Best Hour, and you can do a search there on blogtalkradio.com, and you can find me that way as well. So let's jump in with the Principles of Miracle number 51 on page 13, and of course we're in this book, the black book with the white pearl on it, and this is the Your Text version of Course in Miracles, and nothing has been left out of this. This is the original transcription that Helen Schachman wrote down when she was channeling Jesus, and this began back in 1965 is when she began channeling this work from Jesus. So, and we're on paragraph 85 on page 13. Principle of Miracle 51. The miracle is the only device which man has at his immediate disposal for controlling time. Only revelation transcends time, having nothing to do with time at all. And we talked about that last week, right? That revelation is being in a I want to say connected, or for lack of a better term, I'm going to say channeling the voice for God, capital V voice for God, which is our connection with God. And so it's a one-way communication. There's no dialogue, because it's the state of that Jesus says is reserved for the state of awe, if you will. And it's really, we're hearing, if you will, the thoughts of God, the thoughts of love, the voice of God. And only revelation transcends time, having nothing to do with time at all. The miracle is much like the body in that both are learning aids, which aim at facilitating a state in which they are unnecessary. And you might recall, excuse me, you might recall that a miracle is a sudden shift of perception. Okay, so we just want to continue to reinforce our understanding of what a miracle is. It's a shift of perception from one state of mind to another state of mind, going from a state of mind of separation, if you will, to the consciousness of being joined, to be in communion, to be in unity with our higher self, what we refer to in A Course in Miracles as a Holy Spirit, which of course he also says is nothing more than your right mind. So when the soul's original state of direct communication is reached, neither the body nor the miracle serves any purpose. While he, that would be me and you, I suppose, while he believes he is in a body, however, the human, however, man can choose between loveless and miraculous channels of expression. He can make an empty shell, but he cannot express nothing at all. He can wait, he can delay, paralyze himself, reduce his creativity to almost nothing, and even introduce a developmental arrest or even a regression. But he cannot abolish his creativity. He can destroy his medium of communication, but not his potential. Man was not created by his own free will alone. Only what he creates is his to decide. The basic decision of the miracle-minded is not to wait on time any longer than is necessary. Time can waste as well as be wasted. The miracle worker, therefore, accepts the time control factor gladly because he recognizes that every collapse of time brings all men closer to the ultimate release from time in which the Son and the Father are one. And so, yes, we are repeating, where we ended up last week, if you recall that session that we had last Thursday. when we were channeling last Thursday. So that's that situation. Equality does not imply homogeneity. Now, I want to say that again, just so I can pronounce it properly, right? Equality does not imply homogeneity. And now is italicized. When everyone recognizes that he has everything, individual contributions to the sonship will no longer be necessary. So when everyone realizes that he has everything, then individual contributions to the sonship would no longer be necessary. When the atonement, and we define the atonement as a chain of forgiveness, right, has been completed, all talents will be shared by all the sons of God. God is not partial. All his children have his total love, and all his gifts are freely given to everyone alike. Except, and this is in quotes, and he's quoting the Bible, except ye become as little children, end quote, means that unless you fully recognize your complete dependence on God, you cannot know the real power of the Son, with capital S, Son, in his true relationship with the Father. That would be you. You cannot truly realize or know, you cannot know the real power of your relationship, your true relationship with your Creator, with the capital S source, if you will. You who want peace can find it only by complete forgiveness. You never really wanted peace before, so there was no point in being told how to achieve it. No learning is acquired by anyone unless he wants to learn it and believes in some way that he needs it. While the concept of lack does not exist in the creation of God, it is very, italicized, very apparent in the creations of man. It is, in fact, the essential difference. A need implies lack by definition. It involves the recognition. It involves the recognition that you would be better off in a state which is somehow different from the one that you are in. Paragraph 90. Until the quote-unquote separation, which is a better term than the quote-unquote fall, nothing was lacking. This meant that man had no needs at all. If he had not deprived himself, he would never have experienced them. After the separation, needs became the most powerful source of motivation for human action. All behavior is essentially motivated by needs, but behavior itself is not a divine attribute. The body is the mechanism for behavior. The belief that he could be better off is the reason why man has this mechanism at his disposal. Each one acts according to the particular hierarchy of needs he establishes for himself. His hierarchy, in turn, depends on his perception of what he is. That is, what he lacks. Are we man or are we spirit? Are we body, mind, or are we something outside of body, mind? What are we truly? And really, what is it that we believe ourselves to be truly? A sense of separation from God is the only lack that man really needs to correct. This sense of separation would never have occurred if he had not distorted his perception of truth and thus perceived himself as lacking. The concept of any sort of need hierarchy arose because, having made this fundamental error, he had already fragmented himself into levels with different needs. As he integrates, he becomes one, and his needs become one accordingly. I want to speak just momentarily about the word integrates. We talk about integrity a lot, wholeness as well. And so what it's been shared with me from my teachers is that the awakening process is really the act of reintegration of the self. We've separated ourselves off all over the place, really. Thoughts of anger or thoughts of judgment or things that we kind of put out on the world, and it's a piece of us, if you will, that's out there. It's a fragment of an attribute of us that we've left out there as an energy field, if you will, in this mind of form that we've constructed. And so the forgiveness process, the atonement, the chain of forgiveness, is really about reintegrating the self. So it's not about, and some people have interpreted the Course as you're not a body, the body doesn't exist, it's a dream, etc., etc. So there's nothing real about it, so you don't need to give it any regard whatsoever. Well, it is real. It is your experience of reality right now, right? As a human, it's our experience of the reality, even if it's a reality that we've made up out of whole cloth, just like the dreams we have at night. It seems very real while we're in that experience of dreaming. And we don't need to not like ourselves. The body itself is a divine creation, really. And it has a purpose. And we're beginning to see that it has a purpose that is really the opposite of the purpose of the ego self, the separated self, that mind that we've created. That it's kind of like a thought system. It is a thought system that we've created that is just made up ideas of who and what we are. And that thought system seems to have such a dramatic influence over us that we become hypnotized by it, and we're not really conscious that that we are entranced by the thought system of the small separated self. And so, of course, we see ourselves as a body, the body human, the body mind, and we also believe this is reality, this is our reality. And of course, all of the attributes of separation, the idea of separation, are, played out in our experience. But the body itself can be and is used by the Holy Spirit for a different purpose. And as he says in the Course in Miracles, Jesus tells us that the body's purpose is as a communication device. And so we'll learn more about that as we go. But if we begin to take back, as an act of forgiveness, these judgments that we've placed out all over the place, onto our brothers and sisters and on into the world, then we begin to reintegrate ourselves. And so integrity is a high level of consciousness where we're being self-honest about how we feel. It's a high level of consciousness because we're being honest with our brothers and sisters. And there is no time, right, where you would ever lie that you weren't doing that, as an example, not being honest. There's no time that you would be not being honest unless you were acting out of fear. There's something that you are afraid of. And so we are untruthful and out of integrity when we are acting in such a way. And it seems justified because this ego self is saying, hey, you need to protect yourself from this or that or whatever the argument is that we're listening to, whatever the story is, and it's causing us to act out of alignment with truth, because in truth, there's nothing to protect. Certainly not the body, because we're not a body, right? Again, it doesn't mean that we disrespect it or hate it or don't like it or that it's not our reality. It is absolutely our reality while we're experiencing it, just like the dreams that we have at night, again. But the integration, as we begin to reintegrate ourselves, put ourselves back together, is through this process of forgiveness. So as he integrates, he becomes one, and his needs become one accordingly. Paragraph 92 on page 14, the last paragraph on that page says, unified need produces unified action. Because it produces a lack of ambivalence, the concept of a need hierarchy, a corollary to the original error that man can be separated from God, and that's the original error, that we actually could create a situation when we are separate from God. It's not something that actually happened. It's a misperception of reality, because it's impossible to be outside of the mind of God, because we're an idea in the mind of God, and ideas, as we will read, leave not their source. It's impossible. So man cannot behave effectively while he operates at split levels. And we've talked a little bit about split levels when we were discussing the workbook lessons on my podcast. But we'll be talking about that a lot, and he's referring to it here. The levels that we've already referred to in this first chapter we talked about was the subconscious level, the conscious level, and then the superconscious level, if you can recall that discussion 2-3 weeks ago now, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. The concept of a need hierarchy, a corollary to the original error that man can be separated from God, requires connection at its own level before the error of perceiving levels at all can be corrected. So even the idea of levels and perceiving different levels of consciousness, those are constructs of the mind of fear. And those are misperceptions. So the correction, it requires correction at its own level before the error of perceiving levels at all can be corrected. Man cannot behave effectively while he operates at split levels. And we are clearly operating at split levels. I even look at the small sleeping self as another split level of mind, another sliver, almost like another separate self, but it's not separate. It's just operating at a different level of awareness and a different level of consciousness. And we talk about it all the time, right? That we don't even know that we're safe at home in bed when we're sleeping. We're dreaming of a whole different dimension that we've created out of our consciousness, out of our imagination, yet we are safe. The body is safe at home in bed, right? Or wherever it may be sleeping at. So that's a different level. And so again, I'm back up and he says that the separation that man can be, a corollary to the original error that man can be separated from God requires correction at its own level before the error of perceiving levels at all can be corrected. Man cannot behave effectively while he operates at split levels. However, while he does, correction must be introduced from the bottom up. The bottom we've already discussed as the subconscious, right? And the correction must be introduced, he's saying here, from bottom up. And we've already talked about that being the miracle impulse, or the impulse of miracles comes from the subconscious, not the superconscious. This is because he now operates in space, where concepts such as up and down are meaningful. Ultimately, space is as meaningless as time. The concept is really one of space-time belief. Again, constructs, right? Within the context of a construct, if I can say it that way, we have created the perception of time and space, right? So it's very convincing because the mind can fool itself because it sees itself operating, or maybe it's not even aware of it, but it's operating at split levels of consciousness. Now we're on page 15 and paragraph 93. The physical world exists only because man can use it to correct his unbelief. Let's think about that for a minute. It exists as a teaching device. The physical world exists as a teaching device to help us to overcome our unbelief, which placed him, man, if you will, man and woman, the children of God, in it, which placed him in it originally. The physical world exists only because God's children use it to correct their unbelief, which placed them in it originally. He can never control the effects of fear himself because he made fear and believes in what he made. We believe in fear because we made it. But the mind that made fear is the mind of the ego, and so we made that mind as well. It's a little bit of he's pointing to these different levels of split mind, really, right? And so when we back away from it a little bit in conversation, we begin to see that it's possible that we could be fooled by this construct that we've created out of the mind of illusion. In attitude, then, though not in content, he resembles his own creator. In attitude, but not in content. What I want to say there is what we make, kind of like pretending to be God, what we make of this world is the practice of creation. But what we make as creators in this physical world is temporary because we are not God. And God creates through us when we are connected in the original state of connection with God. When we didn't believe ourselves to be separated, then creation is happening through God's children. But here in the physical plane, we're just acting out that role as if we are the ones that are the quote-unquote creator. And what we make of the world itself, our construct that we've made, and the content is not of God because it's born out of the mind of fear. Who has perfect faith in his creations because he created them? Now this is capitalized, okay? So the who would be the awakened Son of God, child of God, has perfect faith in his, God's creations, because he, God, created them. Belief in a creation produces its existence. We are creating our experience. That is why a man can believe in what no one else thinks is true. It is true for him because it was made by him. I want to read that again. So you can have a completely different construct of belief of what is possible for you, for whatever's possible for you to believe. You can believe whatever you want to believe. Let me put it that way. But whatever that is, whatever your belief is, you're going to create your experience based on that belief. I'll read it again. That's why a man can believe in what no one else thinks is true. Right? Because we've convinced ourselves that something is true that's not. It is true for him because it was made by him. So I want to say at this point, in that last sentence, it is true for him. You see, he is saying what I was trying to refer to. He just says it a lot better than I do, but I was trying to refer to it a few minutes ago when I said, even your sleeping self, the reality that you're experiencing when you're sleeping, even though your body is safe at home in bed, it appears to be your reality. So it is true for you while you're in that state of quote-unquote belief. This is true for us. So to totally disregard the body as, oh, it's not real, it's not true, in my humble opinion or understanding, let me put it that way, and that was given to me by Jesus as he was teaching A Course in Miracles through Paul Tuttle, through Rajpur, right? And he made it very clear that, that's another trap. It's almost like a misperception. So people will deny the body or hate their body or not love themselves or just totally disregard taking care of their body or not be concerned with what they eat. Well, you're not really a body. I mean, it's an absolutist perspective. And it can definitely be a trap for us because we can abuse ourselves, literally. And I want to read this sentence again. So keep in mind that even though it's absolutely not real that we are physical body, we are as God created us to be. And we'll talk about that again and again, and I'm going to use that phrase now. We are as God created us to be, absolutely, but we're having an experience of separation. We're having a dream of separation. We're having an experience of split mind. And because that is what we believe and what we created then, it is absolutely our reality in this present state of mind. It is real to us because it's what we believe. So I'm going to read the sentence again and just to give it one more pass as we think about this for just a minute. It is true for God's children because it was made by them. And I'm just replacing the word him with God's children. We are all one in God. We're all equal. And it doesn't matter whether we say him or her or them or whatever. It's just us as humans having this experience. It is true for him because it was made by him. So yes, it's true for us that we're human, if I can bring it down to that basic statement. Paragraph 94. Every aspect of fear proceeds from upside-down perception. The more truly creative devote their efforts to correcting perceptual distortions. I'm going to read it again. The more truly creative devote their efforts to correcting perceptual distortions. I would kind of think that's what we are, right? We're really, I think, as mighty companions studying this work, that we really are devoted to correcting our perceptual distortions. And that's what A Course in Miracles is here to help us do. The neurotic devotes his to compromise, okay? And we're talking about the more truly creative devote their efforts. So we're talking about creative efforts, or our efforts of mind, if you will, and our thoughts. The neurotic devotes his to compromise. The psychotic tries to escape by establishing the certain truth of his own errors. It's most difficult to free him by ordinary means because he is more consistent in his own denial of truth. So we're talking about a neurotic, we're talking about the truly creative, right? I would like to say that's us, right? I do believe that those that are on a spiritual path of awakening are truly creative in their efforts to correct their perceptual distortions. It takes, I believe, quite a bit of devotion and courage to abandon the teachings of the world. Just the teachings of fear and the teachings of sacrifice and suffering and all those things, regardless of what the church has taught us for many, many hundreds, actually thousands of years, we're up against a lot of conditioning, tremendous amount of conditioning, and fear and fear and fear and fear, right, is being continuously propagated as part of our experience. So I'm going to sidebar for just a second to use an example that's current. Here we are, January 30th of 2020. There is a lot of conversation this week in particular in our media about this new virus. And it's being hailed as a potential pandemic, right? And it's called the coronavirus, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of a Corona beer company. It could have been called the Budweiser virus, someone said to me this week. Anyway, the point is, it is the propagation of fear. What if I were to tell you that it's absolutely possible that this virus has been around for some time and that a vaccine has already been developed, and this is a promotional strategy to cause us to be fearful so that we go out and spend money to become vaccinated against something out of fear. Is that possible? You bet. See, we can either believe it and experience that as our truth, or we can believe something different. All power under heaven and earth is yours. You can believe what you want to believe. But we are constantly bombarded with of a context of fear that we must protect ourselves. If it's not from each other, it's from things that we can't see. There's so much stuff out about global warming and what could happen, that we could save the planet. Of course, many of these things are things that we would never, no matter what we would do and how many ever trillions of dollars we would spend, we would never even realize the impact of that in our short lifetime. We're always being sold a bag of goods about something that we can't even experience in this lifetime. But this virus, this coronavirus, if you will, has been spoken about in some channelings, some recent channelings from Spirit, and Spirit saying it's the same old stuff that you're getting all the time from the people, the powers that be, that want to keep us operating in fear. So I'm sharing that with you again as a sidebar tonight, just as a different way of seeing things. What are we being told and what are we being conditioned to be in fear of, so that we can be manipulated? And it's worthy of some consideration. I'll leave it at that. It's worthy of some consideration. The neurotic devotes his creative efforts, if you will, to compromise, right? We want to exist. The neurotic, if we could say it this way, and whatever your definition might be, for me, I see one who is neurotic is really kind of operating in a deep level of fear and always trying to navigate and negotiate with life to feel safe, or at least safer than one might feel when one is particularly immersed in fear. Okay? I'll leave it at that. The psychotic may be someone who's not quite stable in their thinking, maybe a little bit insane, or maybe, I'll put it this way, a little bit more insane than what we think is normal. But in this teaching, the ego is insane. And when we're operating out of the egoic mind, we're insane regardless, right? We're still operating out of insanity. So we're all insane, I'll put it that way. But when someone is maybe a little bit more insane than we're comfortable with, the psychotic, if you will, tries to escape by establishing the certain truth of his own errors. The certain truth of his own errors, what does he mean here? Well, his errors are errors of perception. And so the psychotic person, if you will, is trying to force his perceptions to be accepted by others, or at least to be validated by his error, by his actions, by his creative efforts, right? That's what he's meaning to, that's what this means as I read it to me. It is most difficult to free him by ordinary means because he is more, and he's talking about the psychotic, it's most difficult to free him by ordinary means, which might be through reason. Maybe we could say that Jesus is trying to reach us here by ordinary means because this whole book, this whole teaching, this curriculum is about applying reason to misperception, to insane ideas. So he's saying it is most difficult to free him, the psychotic person, because by ordinary means, because he is more consistent in his own denial of truth. The person that's psychotic, he just believes what he believes, and you're not going to believe what you say, period. The miracle, however, makes no such distinctions. It, the miracle, corrects errors because they are errors. They're all the same. And in the very first principle of miracles, in fact, I'm going to go back and read it to you again, right? Just to touch on it because it's really so important. But he's saying that there's no order of difficulty in miracles. There's no order of difficulty among miracles. One is not harder or bigger than another. they are all the same. A miracle is a sudden shift of perception. And here you see he's saying that the miracle, right, makes no such distinction between what's harder or easier or anything in between. These different levels of misperception, it just corrects them because they're all the same. It corrects errors because they are errors of perception. Thus, the next point to remember about miracles is principle number 52, paragraph 95. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception, which is what we just said, right? There's no distinction among the degrees of whether someone is truly creative and devoted to correcting their perceptual errors, or someone that is neurotic and someone that is psychotic. The miracle heals all things because all of those things are one thing, just an error of misperception. No sin, no guilt, none of that is relevant. Those are constructs of the fearful mind, the ego construct itself. Those are the context within that structure of the mind of fear. But it places all these different levels, and that's why we say, oh, this person is just really, normal. We believe that there's such a thing, right, as being a normal human, that they act within a certain parameters, right, limitations, definitions, mutually agreed upon definitions of what normal is or what is acceptable. A certain amount of insanity is considered to be not insanity, it's considered to be normal. In other words, a certain amount of error, misperception of reality is acceptable because we all agree that it's not a misperception of reality. This is real. This is real. This world that we're experiencing right now is real in physical form, right? I'm going to go back to that other paragraph, or the last sentence in paragraph 93, and it says, it's true for him because it was made by him. What we believe becomes our reality. That's why a man can believe in what no one else thinks is true, but it's true for him because he made it. What you believe is reflected back as your reality. This is pretty deep, really, but it's also pretty simple when we really begin to unpack it and get a grasp of what he's teaching us here, right? Wow, time flies when we're here. This is goes by so fast as we're getting into this. And each week I think, we'll really move along further, but this is just so filled with such wisdom if you begin to really grasp the simplicity of it all. And I love this, right? The miracle makes no distinctions. It corrects error because they are errors, period. Thus, the next point to remember is that the miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. It is a device for perception correction. Effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. The miracle is completely separate from the misperception, the direction it's taking, or the degree that it seems to be manifesting as. There's no order of difficulty in miracles. Principle of Miracles, number 1. The very first sentence in this book, chapter 1. It's profound. And I love this coursework because it's circuitous. In other words, we think in linear terms, and so we go A to B to C to D, right? And yes, it's good to read through this, but we'll find ourselves coming back to these basic principles again and again and again because it takes us around and around. The truth is really very, very simple. We are experiencing a misperception, period. And there's a way to perceive the truth, period. And that is to join in mind with our higher self, which perceives no misperception, period. This, one of my mentors used to say that this is like the simplest, this is the easiest course you'll ever take. This is the easiest curriculum you'll ever take. But we have this really thick book, right? And we're on page 15. And it's just, we've already covered what we really need to know. But we're just going to keep going around and around because we're going to keep looking at this beautiful bouquet of flowers, this beautiful expression of truth. And we're going to take multiple seats around this table, if you will, and we're going to see this from all sides. And it first begins with us beginning to see the ego mind itself, how it operates between suspicious and vicious. And we'll talk about that again, of course, but we really, and I've had people say to me, oh, this book has a lot of dark ink, like dark negative ink. No, I don't see it that way personally. I see it as just the ego. When we pull back the cloud of misperception about what it is really and how it operates truly in its expression, the parameters that it operates in, then yeah, it does look, we could say, evil. We'll talk about evil, but evil has no life of its own, period. It has no life, but it's something that we can give our energy and attention to, and it can certainly have a dramatic impact in our reality or our perception of reality. And so it's wise to see how the ego is extremely important to see how the ego operates. And so we have to kind of pull back, if you will, the veil that it presents of, oh, it's sweet and kind, and all of the things that it does to make the appearance that it cares, that it knows love, that it's compassionate and empathetic. Nothing could be more further from the truth. It's a lie. The ego has no concept of compassion. It has no concept of empathy, not true empathy. The only way you could truly know those aspects or attributes of your true self is to be in union with your true self and to see through the eyes, if you will, of Christ, your true self. Okay, continuing. I'll read back just a little bit because this is just so important, right? The miracle compares what man has made with the higher level creation. No, I'm jumping ahead instead of going back. Hold on. Where was I? The miracle makes no distinction, paragraph 95. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. It is a device for perception corrective, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. This is its true indiscriminateness. The miracles makes no discrimination. It sees error where it is, no matter what the perception of degree that might be being perceived. So we'll have some discussions, and I'll throw this out. We have just a few minutes left here tonight in our session, but if there's no, and I want to leave you with this to just consider, okay? If you're meditating this week, just considering this profound implications in this very first chapter of this textbook. Think about this. We look at things and say, okay, this is, well, it's just this niggling little thing. It's not really something to get upset about. Somebody lied to me, or somebody, flipped me off. And this morning in the workbook lesson, I shared an anecdotal story about, scenarios that happened to me personally, and my wife and I we had an experience together, and about attracting resonance with our thinking. But I also shared, how we react. The ego reacts instantaneously almost. It's reactionary, and it will attack as a defense. But I don't know. But the point of the conversation was, I don't know if you've ever cut somebody off on the highway and then they got angry at you, and you looked at that and you said, well, you know, I didn't mean to do that, right? Or you did that to somebody, or somebody did that to you, and you got upset and you flipped somebody off. You said, well, that's not, I mean, I can see how I might have been making something out of pretty much nothing, really. You know, I mean, the person, I'm sure, didn't really mean to, you know, cut me off, as an example, but I got angry because, why did I get angry, right? Because there's an underlying fear, right? There is a misperception there. There's an error in thought. There's a misperception of reality right there in that example. But the point is, what if somebody, maybe let's say you get to the point where you're operating through this teaching, where you're finally getting to the point where, you know, somebody could do that to you and this morning I'm saying you'll find yourself just easing off the gas and backing away and not being concerned if somebody cuts you off. You just see that it's really, everybody's doing the best they can, and that person might not even have seen you. You might have been in their blind spot, whatever, you know. We can forgive that. We can withhold judgment. We can withhold rage or anger or acting irresponsibly, you know, in a $3,000 vehicle going down the road at 50 miles an hour where we could kill ourselves or somebody. That's much smarter. And if you checked in with Spirit at that moment, I'm pretty sure Spirit would say, you know, slow down a little bit. Everything's fine. No need to get upset, right? But then let's say that is a point of graduation and you're saying, I can handle that. I can handle somebody cutting me off and I'm not going to get upset anymore. In fact, I don't even drive very fast anymore. When I'm really focused on this teaching and I'm connected with Spirit, my wife says I drive like a completely different person. It's true. If you let Spirit be your co-pilot when you're driving, you will be a much safer driver. I promise you that, right? Okay. But then let's say I can handle that, but then somebody broke into my house. I went on vacation and somebody broke into my house and they stole, you know, my wife's jewelry, or they stole my TV or whatever, ransacked my house. Well, I got a reason to be angry about that, right? No. No. There's no lines or levels of degrees in error. It's all the same thing. There's no order of difficulty in miracles. And what's a miracle? A sudden shift of perception. Forgiveness through the eyes of Christ, which is the energy of the Creator that you are, Christ consciousness, would never, and Jesus says, we'll be reading it soon, there is never a reason to be angry. So let's think about that one, right? So I want to share that with you to ponder over that, because there's other things that we could think about where somebody's done something to someone that's near and dear to us or us that is just no way could that ever be forgiven. That's stuck in the mind of ego. That's vengeance, that's a grievance, that's insanity. When we begin to apply reason and see that that's not the real world to begin with, that's a lie. And so we begin to have to be, if I can use the term, more absolute in how we approach this teaching. That we begin to apply this very first principle in our daily life, that there are no order of difficulty in miracles. There are no lines and levels or degrees or distinctions between error. It's just error. And when we practice this practice and learn from this curriculum about how to resolve that by being miracle-minded, then we don't suffer anymore. We literally just don't suffer that. And you know what? Other people don't suffer us either. They don't suffer us. We're not causing them pain. If we're causing somebody pain, it's their misperception, them making up their mind, right, about whatever they're deciding, but it's not something we're not all familiar with, right? We've all gotten upset with other people, but this is taking us to a higher level of operation. It's a high call to begin to withhold judgment from our brothers and sisters. Bottom line, right? Okay. I'm going to try to get through, well, we've only got about 5 minutes, so we may. Okay. This is its true indiscriminateness. Okay, so we're at 96 on page 15. Christ-controlled miracles are selective only in the sense that they are directed towards those who can use them for themselves. Christ-controlled. This is a whole new conversation, right? And we've only got 5 minutes, 4 minutes now. Christ-controlled miracles, and he's already told us that as Christ, right, Christ consciousness, that this is we could say group consciousness. It's not the personality self, Jesus, but it is the Christ consciousness that Jesus was clearly a perfect demonstration of, right, for us, for all of us to see. So Christ-controlled miracles are selective only, and this is italicized, in the sense that they are directed towards those who can use them for themselves. In other words, those who are willing to receive them. Have you ever felt like no matter what the miracle was, you were so upset, so unhappy, so angry, whatever the case may be, that no amount of miracle was going to help you, or you weren't going to change your anger or change your whatever? You see what I'm saying? Christ-controlled miracles, see, this is really a beautiful thing, because what it's saying is love is never wasted, you see. And it's been told to me, that I'll share with you now by Jesus, that through Paul Tettle, that, the Holy Spirit holds your divinity in trust while you dabble with the ego. So if someone is sending you love and you're not willing to receive it, the Holy Spirit is going to hold that love in trust until you're ready to receive it. Because in truth, if we are operating in a time-space continuum, a belief system of time and space that we've made, then that doesn't exist either. So whatever the gift of love is, it's instantaneous. And I've said tonight already, I believe that giving and receiving are one. But the point is, it's already yours. You can't be in a state of lack except in your imagination, except in your misperception, and going back to the error. Christ-controlled miracles are selective only in the sense that they are directed towards those who can use them for themselves. Since this makes it inevitable that they will extend them to others, a strong chain of atonement, forgiveness, right, is welded. So for each of us that are miracle-ready, miracle-minded and miracle-ready, from the subconscious self, subconscious mind, subconscious consciousness, the miracle impulse, which is directed by Christ consciousness, right? Christ controlled, would then be directed towards those of us who can use those miracles for ourselves so that we can become the conduit, we become the channel, we become the extension of those miracles. How beautiful that is, right? Wow, we're down to 1 minute. And so, my brothers and sisters, let's take a good deep breath. Let's close our eyes for just a moment. And I'm going to close out with a prayer. I just want to say once again, thank you for being with me tonight, for helping me to bring myself to a place here of devotion with you in this study. I'm truly honored that you're studying this with me. What a gift. What a gift this has been for me to be with you tonight. Let's take a good deep breath. My heart is beating in the peace of God. Surrounding me is all the life that God created in His love. It calls to me in every heartbeat and in every breath, in every action and in every thought. Peace fills my heart and floods my body with the purpose of forgiveness. Now my mind is healed, and all I need to save the world is given me. Each heartbeat brings me peace. Each breath infuses me with strength. I am a messenger of God, directed by His voice, sustained by Him in love, and held forever quiet and at peace within His loving arms. Each heartbeat calls His name, and everyone is answered by His voice, assuring me I am at home in Him. So let me attend your voice, not my own. Father, my heart is beating in the peace the heart of love created. It is there and only there that I can be at home. And so it is. And so it shall be, and so it is now. Thank you. I love you, really. I truly love you. And I appreciate your comments. I want to flip over to our channel here and see if I can. If anyone if you had left me some comments, I might be able to see those. Yeah. So I really, really appreciate you guys being here. It's just been a wonderful night for me personally. So again, I say thank you so much. Have a great night. I love you. And I look forward to being back with you next week. God bless. We'll see you then.